If your aquarium isn't thriving, you might be making one of these common mistakes. Don't worry, I've been there too. But today we're going to go through and break down these common mistakes and show you how you can fix them so you can make your dream aquascape in your home, in your office, maybe it's your home office. But let's go through and break down these common mistakes beginners make getting into the hobby. Oh, and at the end, I'm going to tell you my number one mistake that I made getting into the hobby. Well, first and foremost, let's break down number one. Number one is going to be not cycling your tank, just going right into it, adding everything right at once. There's a fine balance between beneficial bacteria, nitrates, ammonia, nitrates. All of this combination is what truly makes your aquarium thrive. And in that process, you need to make sure you cycle your aquarium before you do anything else with it. So that is number one. And if you haven't yet and you want to know how to cycle your tank, look up right here. I've done a step on cycling your tank so that you can get more in depth outside of this video. Number two is choosing the wrong plants at a beginner, right? You do not need the higher end plants. You need some very essential plants that are not very high maintenance. And those plants are Nubises. I prefer in Nanoscape, Anubis petites. There's some different ones as well that you can go through. I love the jalapenos. I've been adding those into mine as well. Booth Flandres? Yeah, that's how you say it. Maybe not. I know. I'm wrong of pronouncing words sometimes. But anyways, Booses. Booses are amazing, low maintenance. They thrive in high light, low light. They do not need CO2, right? So these basic aquarium plants that are epiphytes, things that feed off the water column. Then there's some good stem plants like Rotala. Rotala is an amazing plant as well. Hydrophilia is another amazing plant to start out with. Java ferns, right? Or mosses, Christmas moss, Java moss. Those are amazing plants, low maintenance, easy to start in the aquascaping hobby. Number three is incorrect lighting. Make sure you do not run your light too long throughout the day. You want to run it around 6 to 8 hours at the max. I run all of mine for around 6 to 8 hours at a lower setting. Now, if I want a higher density light and I'm running CO2, that's a whole different ballpark, but we're talking beginner level, no CO2, and we're trying to maintain a better lighting standard. So again, not as long and not as powerful from a lighting perspective will reduce the algae breakouts that you're having in your aquarium that you might start seeing now. So that is number three. Right on to number four is overplanting or not enough plants. Plants are a huge beneficial part to starting out in the aquascaping hobby. And as you're seeing a lot of my cut throughs to my videos, well, my aquariums that you're seeing, I have a ton of plants, right? There's a fine line between too much and not enough. But let's talk about not enough. You need live aquarium plants to help break down some of that nutrients in your aquarium. So with that, make sure you're applying enough plants in your aquascape, but not too much where it's too dense in specific areas. You want to spread out the plant growth in your aquarium. You're going to have foreground plants, you're going to have mid-ground plants, and then you're going to have background plants. So again, please check out some of my recent videos and some of the plants that I recommend for those different zones. And there's a point where you don't have enough plants, right? So make sure you're having enough plants in your aquarium. You don't want to have zero, and you don't want to have too much plants in your aquarium where there's no light getting down to some of your smaller plants in your aquarium. So easy advice is follow the 60 to 70% rule in your aquarium. When you're setting it up, you want about 60% to 70% of your overall aquarium filled with plants. Number five is overfeeding your fish or any invertebrates or anything you have in your aquarium. Overfeeding. Everyone always does it. It's something that you learn when you're in the aquascaping hobby because your fish or your invertebrates look hungry, right? They're always going to eat no matter what. If you add more food, they're going to eat. but the quantity and the amount of what food you're adding is what's important here. I feed all of my aquariums 1 time a day, but recommendation would be feed your fish what they can eat in about 2 to 3 minutes. Your invertebrates are different. So your Neocaridina shrimp, your Caridina shrimp line, those are a little bit different. Typically I'll feed them some type of pellet or some blanched food, something that they can eat within 4 to 6 hours and then remove it. What happens is when that food and matter breaks down, it's going to create an ammonia spike. And what happens is your aquarium is not balanced for that large of an ammonia spike, so you're going to have algae breakout, right? So just be aware, do not overfeed your aquarium. Number 6 is too much maintenance or not enough maintenance. What's the sweet spot, right? What's that thought process of going through and maintaining your aquarium? So if you don't do enough maintenance, there's not enough new water coming into your aquarium. You got to think about aquariums. They're not a pond setup where it's stagnant water. There's typically flow in water, new water turnover that's actually out in nature. What we're doing in the aquascaping hobby is having water not stagnant in terms of we have filtration and water flow, but there's no new water being generated in those areas. So what you need to do is definitely do some water changes in your aquarium. Now, some people get away with doing 0 water changes and they've had great experience with it. I have not. I let this tank run for 2 months without doing anything to it. And we had poor water quality right at that 2-month marker, and I had to do some water changes. So again, highly recommend doing water changes, but there is a point where there's too much water changes. You're not actively doing water changes every single day. Typically, what I do for my rule of thumb is when a tank in an aquarium is finally steady, meaning it's reached its about 4 to 5 month mature period, I'll change from doing weekly water changes to doing right about bi-weekly water changes. I've tried pushing it to the 3-week mark, and that typically happens only when I'm going on vacation or I don't have time to do every single tank. I'll push it out a little bit longer, but my sweet spot right now where I'm seeing all of these aquariums thrive is every 2 weeks after they reach the 4 to 5 month period of being established. Moving on to number 7, chasing water parameters. You're never going to get a perfect score on your water parameters unless you're in a lab and there's no random, debris in the air flying into your aquarium. It's super high volatility when you have open tank aquariums. But you can narrow it down to good parameters, right? You want to make sure there's not high fluctuation in water parameters. And you could do that by doing water changes, not every day, right? But you're adding the same type of TDS in terms of total dissolved solids, which is actually minerals in it. So remove TDS out of there. Probably shouldn't have said that. Having the right GH, KH in that water prior to adding it back in. Make sure it's the exact same. I use I use additives in mine using RODI to make sure I'm getting the correct parameters back in. So remineralizing RODI is my sweet spot of how I found it, but you're never gonna get the perfect score on your water parameters. So don't chase the perfect score, chase stability, right? So that's what you're looking for when you're actually going through and associating your water parameters. All right, so let's recap this. We went through and talked about cycling your aquarium. We talked about lighting. We talked about parameters. We went through and talked about overfeeding. We talked about the 7 most common mistakes people make in the aquascaping hobby. And hopefully this helps you moving forward as a beginner. Now, my number 1 mistake was cycling. Definitely was the hardest thing for me to figure out because I was not patient. Patience is key whenever you're starting out in this hobby and learning out when you're actually creating an aquarium that you can't immediately add things directly into that aquarium. Let it cycle, let it find its balance, let nature take its course, and learn some for me it was like I wasn't patient. I'm never patient. I want it now, I want it going. Learn some patience in that atmosphere and being able to enjoy that perfect nature and balance within that aquarium. Now, hopefully you found this helpful. I'm gonna ask you a question now, and hopefully you can comment below. What was the hardest thing for you starting out in the hobby? And if you are starting out in the hobby and you have any questions, feel free to comment below as well. But until next time, well, no, check out my latest video right here. And now, until next time, I'll see you all on the next video.